Two people might have been linked to this crazy lung disease that's floating around the US right now. Keep watching to find out who. So in this video, we have a couple stories to talk about with all this lung disease talk going around. About a week ago, two brothers from Kenosha, Wisconsin were actually arrested by the police after they raided their home and found $59,000 in cash, firearms, 18 pounds of weed, 31,200 THC cartridges, 98,000 unfilled THC cartridges, 1,600 ounces of THC oil, and some cocaine. But what were their names? Jacob and Tyler Huffheinis. So these two butt sniffers were actually holding on to $1.5 million in THC products, and of course they were exporting thousands upon thousands of these cartridges every single day. This story sounds a lot like the story of Douglas Dodd and Lance Barabas, who started a drug empire off oxycodone. So when I was doing the research into this story, there's a couple little interesting things I wanted to pull up. So let's bring up this quote from Sheriff Beth. And he has to say, "If you, as a parent, see anything that looks like, well, it's just Sour Patch, it's just cherry, it's not candy," he said. "It's highly potent drugs." Okay, so if you see a box that says Sour Patch, that should be your first red flag. Sour Patch Kids come in plastic bags, not tiny boxes. It says chronic on the box, which is a very common slang term for weed, so that's another big red flag. If it has a cartridge inside and THC warnings on the back and side of the packaging, that's a little bit of a red flag. I'm sorry, but if you saw that box and just said, "Oh, it's just Sour Patch Kids," you're dumb. So the main two brands that have been talked about the most when it comes to these vitamin E acetate cut THC cartridges are Dank Vapes and Chronic Carts. You know, exactly what these two guys are distributing. Now, isn't that interesting? Do you think these are going to be the guys that are caught as the ones making everybody sick? Leave your comments down below. New news has popped up about the first vaping-related illness in Canada, which comes from a teen from London, Ontario. CBC actually broadcasted the press release from the Middlesex London Health Unit, and it was really hard to listen to. My computer was maxed out and I still could barely hear it. So to sum up this broadcast, people were asking questions about seeing toxicology reports from the patients, finding out what brands or products these patients were actually using, and of course if the use of cannabis cartridges were involved. And of course basically every question that was asked was just simply avoided. To show an example of this, I'm going to bring up a clip of a man asking if the patient was actually using cannabis products.
We know in the US this illness has been associated with actually cannabis. And or at least that's the idea so far, that it's cannabis vaping, and that it's cannabis bought, not at a shop, but in an online way, maybe something that's less well known than a Juul, for example. Do we know yet where she got the product that she was using, and if it was cannabis or? Okay.
So thanks for the question. The question is about cannabis. We won't be commenting on that in this situation in order to protect patient confidentiality. I notice you're using a gendered pronoun. I hope that's not because we have...
That's because I just got in here and...
Okay, no problem. We're not releasing the gender at this point. And so I think... Did I miss any part of the question?
So you're not willing to say whether it's cannabis or not at this point?
So we have information about the brand used. We have information about whether or not the individual was using cannabis. The information that we have from looking across the whole spectrum of illness related to vaping is that there's no particular brand that has been implicated, and there's no particular link with cannabis or not. There are cases where cannabis is involved and cases where it hasn't been. So in order to clarify the health messaging, we're not going to be releasing the brand related information because that would imply that this is something coming from one brand when clearly looking at the international evidence.
So the guy bounced around the question and didn't answer it directly, The way he worded his response, though, very much implies that it did involve cannabis, but they don't want to get anybody in trouble. Cannabis extracts are going to be legal later on this year in Canada, and of course, if news was to come out that they could be causing deaths, it definitely wouldn't look very good for the government. And this other clip I'm pulling up is just where this guy just sounds kind of stupid.
One follow-up on that, please. Is quite correct. THC has been used for many years with minimal reports of issues. Maybe the opposite, in fact. But just recently, they've been taking the cannabis plant, extracting the THC into shatter form, and then using a solvent to liquidize it so you can vape it. This makes a very convenient way to consume your THC. You're not burning it, you're not rolling a joint, you've got a little cartridge. So this is a very new thing that we're seeing. And when you're not using the correct solvent, if you're using something oil-based, not water-soluble, you're going to have some lung issues, and that's, I believe, what we're seeing.
So the reality is that THC has been vaped for as long as vaping has been vaped. Several years ago, we were hearing reports of THC being vaped here in London, and we know that London was not the first place that was tried. So I don't think the comparison is really exactly as clear
Liquid
as
form.
you've stated.
Liquid form.
Liquid form.
That's not been done for years.
Just
THC has been vaped for as long as vaping has been vaped. So now we're saying that the word vaping means nicotine. It doesn't mean nicotine.
We use the term vaping, and we use the term, you've used the term e-cigarettes when it comes to these cartridges. I think they're two different things entirely.
We didn't hear about anybody using any sort of THC oil to vaporize until about 2 years ago. There's no doubt that THC has been vaped for a very long time, but that's in the form of the flower. We've only seen these THC and CBD vaping products come out in the last couple years, and the fact is, they don't even use the same kind of tanks that are used for e-liquid. The misinformation that all these news outlets are saying is starting to get out of hand. One of the few places that I found that were addressing everything properly actually came from the Huffington Post. But how did they do that? So they said that the FDA and the CDC had put out a specific warning for THC vapor products. Not just vaping in general, like everyone else is trying to tell us. So they said that the FDA and CDC put out a warning to not use THC products bought off the black market as they could contain vitamin E acetates, which, as you've probably heard, is the most likely culprit in this whole ordeal. Actually, you know what? Speaking on that, I'm gonna pull up another clip that came off CNN.
Can you say for sure this is safe? I mean, this is ultimately what it comes down to.
No one says. No one, that's not what it ultimately comes down to, because this is about harm reduction. The Royal College of Physicians, Public Health England, Cancer Research UK have all said that vaping is at least 95% safer than smoking. Safer. This is about harm reduction and giving smokers a better option than continuing to smoke.
You got 500 people who are sick.
And the FDA agrees these products are far less hazardous.
That's
From contaminated THC
We just don't know that, Mr. Connolly. You're making that leap. We don't know that. I mean, at least not the CDC and the government officials do not. No, they don't. They say, I mean, I just read to you.
The FDA issued a specific warning. The FDA issued a specific warning only about contaminated THC products.
The CDC,
why did the
American
FDA
Medical
decide? Why did the
Association
FDA decide that only contaminated THC products warranted a big warning? Why, if the FDA has any concern,
let me just give you one last example. Mr. Connolly, hold on one second. There's a 17-year-old in Texas right now who is on life support.
Who admitted to vaping THC, I believe.
No, whose mother said that she was using vaping, according to the local media, she was using vaping to stop smoking, exactly what you're suggesting that she do, and she has double pneumonia and she's on life support right now. So my point is this. You are reaching a conclusion that officials have not yet reached. And
lipoid pneumonia comes from inhaling oils. There are no oils in nicotine.
You can also get pneumonia from being a smoker.
Evidence will come out.
Just to be clear,
you can get regular pneumonia. You can't get lipoid pneumonia. Let's be clear.
Let's also be clear. The CDC, the American Medical
Association,
have said we should not be vaping. This is CDC, the American Medical Association.
The American Medical Association has opposed vaping for 10 years. They are adamantly opposed to any form of tobacco harm reduction for smokers. That should not come as a surprise to anyone familiar with this debate.
Okay. Mr. Conley?
Smokers should know they can save their lives, improve their health by switching to store-bought nicotine vaping products. Don't be scared off by activists who are trying to keep you smoking.
Mr. Conley, you have made your case loud and clear here.
Thank you.
We thank you for coming on New Day. Thanks so much. And Sanjay, thanks so much for explaining the other side.
Thank you.
So yeah, as you can see, don't trust media outlets because they're just getting mad at people for trying to tell them the facts that are out there. But of course, big media, being who they are, decided to simplify that down to the fact that vaping is dangerous, because that's what makes a headline. One thing I'm not seeing too much, and I need to throw in, is that you should probably stay away from CBD cartridges as well, because you never know what these people are doing just to make a couple extra bucks. It's completely terrible that I've been getting tons of messages from family and friends thinking that they're gonna need to stop vaping because of how terrifying the news makes it. The big thing that they're worried about is having to actually go back to cigarettes. Also, why is no one talking about how bad cigarettes are? As long as you're buying vape products from a reputable, trusted vape shop, you're gonna be vaping in the safest way possible. I usually even recommend staying away from pre-filled pods, not only because of the cost, but at least if you're getting a refillable device, you know exactly what you're putting inside of it. Propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, flavoring, and nicotine, which is optional. No THC. Do not buy any of your vapor products from any sort of gas station or convenience store. They're not vape shops and they probably have no idea what they're actually buying. Heck, there's even studies that have come out of the UK that have proven vaping to be 95% safer than smoking. Now, if you don't smoke already, don't start vaping. The only reason you should ever be vaping is to stop smoking tobacco. And now, of course, clean air is the absolute safest method because nothing but air is supposed to be going into your lungs. However, that doesn't mean that lung disease isn't impossible to happen, because you can just go look at Walter White. But if he's offering you vape juice, I'd probably stay away. Now, when it comes to banning flavors, the simple fact is that we shouldn't. Now, what we should be doing is completely banning the sale of vapor products, or at least flavor ones, from convenience stores, gas stations, anything that's not a specialty vape shop. The main reason for that is because a lot of these places don't give a damn and they'll gladly sell tobacco products or vapor products to a 14-year-old. And that's especially true when their 16 or 17-year-old friend is sitting right behind the counter. Restricting the sale of vapor products to dedicated vapor shops is the only way I can really think to keep it out of the hands of children. Banning flavors means closing businesses and thousands upon thousands of Canadians losing their job. Some people definitely will continue to vape these strictly tobacco flavors, but of course many of these people are also going to go back to cigarettes. And of course, because people can't get the products they want, it creates a black market which also hurts legitimate businesses. People are going to start making vape juice in unsanitary places, unlike the labs that all of our juices come from. Other than the fact that they're more than likely going to be using super low-grade nicotine, who knows what else they could be throwing in when they're just selling it on Facebook Marketplace. And because it's unsanitary, people are more than likely going to be getting sick. And don't even at me about online sales because every vape shop is going through Canada Post, which has an 18 or 19 plus age verification system. This makes sure that the person receiving the package is who is supposed to be receiving the package and that they're going to be of legal age. So before I sign off, do you want to know the craziest way the kids are actually getting vapor products, tobacco products, or even alcohol? It's their parents. If parents are buying their kids 18 plus products, which happens a disgusting amount, then clearly flavors aren't the problem here. But whatever, what do I know? Not like I've seen it firsthand or anything. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. I want to hear all of your opinions. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, that way you'll stay up to date with all the latest vaping news. I'm Cam and I'll see you in the next one.